You're standing in front of the bathroom mirror, holding the sides of your hair back, and someone once told you that at your age you should just cut it all off and keep it simple. Maybe your stylist said it. Maybe a magazine did. And here is the truth almost no one over 60 was ever told. The haircut that was sold to you as practical, low maintenance, and age appropriate is the exact haircut that adds 10 years to your face. I believed that rule for far too long. I sat in that chair and let them take it all off because a woman half my age smiled and said it would be easier. By the end of this, I'm going to hand you a single cutting technique that silver-haired icons used for decades to look lifted and luminous, one that got quietly buried because it doesn't sell you a standing monthly appointment. And I promise you, this works with the hair already on your head today. No transplant, no wig, no fortune spent, just the truth they kept from us. Let me take you back for a second. I remember the exact salon, the beige walls, the smell of that cheap shampoo they warm up in the bowl. I was somewhere around 62, and I walked in with hair past my shoulders that I loved. I walked out with what I now call the helmet. The young woman with the scissors kept saying the word sensible, sensible. I paid $55 to be made to look like everyone's idea of a grandmother, and I cried in the car before I even started the engine. That day is the reason I started digging, and what I found made me angry in a way I want to share with you, carefully, because you deserve the whole story. So let's start with that first haircut, the one they pushed on me. The ultra-short, cropped, close to the scalp cut they love to call easy. Here is the rule you were handed. Short hair is younger, cleaner, and more appropriate once you pass 60. It sounds reasonable. It sounds tidy. It is almost completely wrong, and I can tell you exactly why. When hair is cut extremely short and flat against the head, it does something cruel to a mature face. It removes every bit of softness around the jaw and cheeks, and it exposes the parts of the face that naturally lose volume as we age. Dermatologists have documented that after we turn 60, the fat pads in the mid-face shift downward, and the jawline softens. That is normal. That is every one of us. But a severe crop frames that change instead of hiding it. It draws a hard line right where the face is at its most vulnerable. The scalp shows through on top, the ears stick out, and the whole head starts to look smaller and more fragile than the woman actually is. I learned something that stopped me cold. A little bit of length and movement near the jaw acts like a soft filter. It blurs the very line that ages you. Hairdressers who trained in the great salons knew this. There's a reason the most photographed older women of the last century almost never wore a shaved flat crop. They kept a whisper of length exactly where the face needed shadow and grace. The crop was never about your beauty, it was about your calendar. Because a crop like that has to be trimmed every 3 to 4 weeks to keep its shape, or it grows into a shapeless puff. Guess who benefits from you coming back every month? Now, I am not telling you that short hair is forbidden. I wear my hair on the shorter side now, and I love it. What I am telling you is that flat, severe, and scalped is the enemy, and softness is the fix. And that raises a bigger question, one that took me years to answer. If short in itself isn't the problem, then why did every mistake I made afterward keep making me look older? Because there was a second haircut waiting for me, and it was even worse. Let me tell you about the tight, all-over curl, the perm. The tight little rows of curls set close to the head that so many women our age were funneled into. Here is the rule they gave us. As hair thins with age, a tight perm adds body and makes hair look fuller. My own mother believed that. I believed it. I sat under that dryer, breathing in ammonia, convinced I was doing the smart thing. But here is what the science actually shows, and it's the opposite of what we were told. As we age, the hair shaft itself changes. Researchers studying gray and aging hair, including teams connected to major cosmetic science labs in France, found that once hair loses its pigment, it also changes in shape and surface. Gray hair is often wearier, drier, and more porous than the hair we had at 30. It already fights to hold a curl unevenly. When you force a chemical perm onto hair that is already coarse and dry, you get frizz, not fullness. You get tight, brittle curls that break easily and separate to show even more scalp underneath. And there is something even sneakier. A tight uniform curl set close to the skull actually reveals thinning better than almost any other style, because the gaps between the curls open up like little windows straight to the scalp. The very thing the perm promised to hide, it puts on display. I spent close to $80 a visit, several times a year, chasing volume that the chemicals were quietly stealing from me. Every perm left my hair a little thinner, a little more fragile, a little more see-through. I was paying to accelerate the exact problem I was trying to solve. The real fix costs nothing extra, and it's almost embarrassingly simple. Loose, soft waves and a little natural texture add far more believable volume than any tight perm, and they don't fracture the hair. Movement is what reads as youth. A curl that can bend and shift, catches the light, and looks alive. A curl locked into a rigid grid looks set in concrete, and concrete never looks young. So the perm was another rule that served the salon's schedule and the chemical company's profit, not my mirror. Therefore, if the crop exposed me and the perm thinned me, you would think the safe middle ground would be a nice, solid, blunt bob. Everyone loves a bob. That's what I thought too. And that assumption walked me straight into the third mistake. The heavy, blunt, one-length bob. Cut straight across, all the same length, sitting right at the chin or jaw like a closed door. Here is the rule. A blunt bob is classic, elegant, and flattering on everyone. And I will admit a blunt bob can be stunning on the right person. But on most women over 60, cut with no layers and no movement, it does something you have to see to believe. A single solid weight line at the jaw acts like an arrow pointing straight at the softest part of your face. All that heavy hair hangs down and pulls the eye down with it. Our faces already carry a natural downward shift as we age, and a blunt line at the jaw amplifies it. Worse, when hair is all cut to exactly one length, it clumps together into a flat, heavy curtain that lies dead against the head at the crown. And the crown, the top of the head, is exactly where we lose the most volume as we get older. I read hair density research that put a number on it that shocked me. The average woman can lose a meaningful percentage of her hair density every decade after menopause. By our 60s, the top of the head is naturally flatter than it was. A blunt bob starves that flat crown of any lift and lets all the weight sag around the jaw. So you end up flat where you need height and heavy where you need lightness. It's exactly backwards. The correction is not to abandon the bob. I still love a bob. The correction is to break the weight line. A few soft, invisible layers through the mid-lengths and around the face let the hair breathe, lift at the crown, and taper gently near the jaw instead of chopping across it like a ruler. The difference between a blunt bob and a softly graduated one is the difference between a door slamming shut and a curtain drifting in a breeze. One frames the aging, one flatters the woman. And here is where I need to stop and tell you something. Because I've been building your anger for 3 haircuts now, and you deserve to understand who profited from all of this. For decades, the beauty and fashion world quietly agreed on one message for women our age. Play it down. Go shorter. Go safer. Go simpler. Disappear a little. It was never sold to us as disappear. It was sold as sensible, low maintenance, age-appropriate, flattering. Those soft words were the wrapping. Paper. Inside the box was a business model. A woman who is told her best days of style are behind her, stops experimenting, stops asking for what she wants, and starts accepting whatever she's given. She becomes an easy customer. She takes the standard cut on the standard schedule, and she doesn't complain. She has been trained not to expect to look beautiful, only to look appropriate. That is the villain. Not one stylist, not one magazine. A whole quiet agreement that older women should be practical rather than radiant, and that our resignation was good for business. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Every sensible cut I'd ever accepted was a small surrender I hadn't even chosen. So let me keep pulling the curtain back, because the 4th mistake is the one almost nobody warns you about. The over-thinned, over-layered, choppy cut. The one where a stylist takes thinning shears and razors and carves your hair into 1,000 feathery pieces to take the weight out and add texture. Here is the rule they sell. Thin, fine, or aging hair needs lots of layers and thinning to look light and modern. It sounds current. It sounds like they're doing you a favor. It is one of the most damaging things you can do to mature hair, and here's why. Remember what I told you about the hair shaft changing with age? Thinner, more fragile, more porous, fewer strands than we used to have. Now picture a stylist attacking that already reduced head of hair with thinning shears, cutting some strands short and leaving others long, razoring the ends into wispy points. What you get is not fullness. You get see-through, stringy ends and a scalp that peeks through everywhere the layers separate. The hair looks sparse because it has been made sparse. Those razored points also split and frizz, especially on gray hair that's already drier, so the ends look frayed and tired within weeks. I fell for this one hard. A stylist convinced me my hair was too heavy and needed thinning, and I walked out feeling light and pretty for about 4 days. Then it started to look thin and scraggly, and I couldn't figure out why, so I went back and asked for more thinning, thinking that would fix it. I was cutting away the very fullness I had left. It took me embarrassingly long to understand that on aging hair, keeping the ends strong and bluntish, with only gentle, purposeful layering, makes hair look thicker, not thinner. The illusion of density comes from ends that stay together, not ends that shatter into wisps. There's a beautiful old principle behind this that the great hairdressers understood long before thinning shears became a shortcut. Blunter, connected ends bounce light off a solid edge, and that edge reads as thickness to the eye. Chopped, feathered, over-textured ends scatter and vanish. Every extra snip of the thinning shears was another dollar of value cut out of the hair I had. So the add texture cut, sold as modern, was often just erosion with a fancy name. If any of this is landing the way I hope it is, I want you to know that everything I've uncovered about these rules, the ones that were quietly working against us, I eventually gathered into a digital book called The Style System, and it's available right now in the description below for $77. It goes deeper than any single video can, walking you through the full picture of what was sold to us as flattering and why, alongside the real principles that actually work on our hair, our faces, and our lives at this exact stage. If you're the kind of woman who wants the whole story in one place rather than piece by piece, that's exactly what it's there for. But for now, let's keep pulling this apart together, because understanding where the money trail really led is the only way to stop following it. But maybe right now you're thinking that all of this is fine for women who can afford a good salon and a fancy stylist, and that none of it helps you standing in your bathroom with the hair you already have and no money to throw at it. I want to speak to you directly, because I know that feeling, and I promise this next part is for you and only you. Here is the truth. Every correction I've given you so far can be started at home, today, with what you already own, and not one of them requires a new stylist or a big spend. Let me prove it. If you have a flat, heavy crown from an old blunt cut, you do not need a haircut this week to fix it. You need to change where your hair sits. Take your normal parting and move it. If you've parted your hair on the same side for 30 years, that part has trained your hair to lie flat and expose the scalp along that line. Shift it half an inch or switch sides entirely, and the hair has to lift off the scalp to lie the new way. That single change adds visible height at the crown in about 10 seconds, for free. If your ends look thin and wispy from old over-thinning, stop brushing them out flat. When your hair is nearly dry, tip your head upside down for a moment and gently scrunch the mid-lengths with your fingers to encourage the ends to gather together instead of separating. Gathered ends read as fuller ends. Again, free, and you can do it right now with a mirror and your own 2 hands. And if you've been fighting dry, frizzy gray with more product and more heat, try the opposite. A tiny amount of any oil you already have in the kitchen, a single drop of olive oil warmed between your palms and smoothed only over the very ends, tames the frizz that ages the whole style. Not the roots, only the ends. I did this for years before I ever owned a fancy serum. The point is this: the biggest changes here are not about money. They are about undoing the habits, the old rules trained into you. You already have everything you need to start looking lifted and softer by tonight. So now that you know these fixes belong to you no matter your budget, let me get to the 5th haircut and then to the secret I promised you, because that secret is the one that changes everything. The 5th mistake is the opposite trap, and it catches the women who rebelled against the crop. It's the long, flat, one-length hair left completely without shape. Here is the rule, and it's a rebellious-sounding one. Just grow it long and leave it, because long hair is free-spirited and youthful. I understand the appeal. After being told to cut it off, Growing it long feels like taking your power back. But long hair with no shape, parted flat down the middle and hanging straight, can drag a mature face down just as hard as the blunt bob does, sometimes harder. When long hair has no layering and no lift, gravity does all the work. And gravity is not our friend after 60. The weight pulls everything vertical and downward. The flat center part exposes the widest, most see-through part of the scalp. And long, unshaped hair tends to look thinnest right at the ends, so the eye travels all the way down to the sparsest point and reads the whole head as thin. Length itself is not the problem. Shapelessness is. Some of the most striking older women in the world wear their hair long, but never flat and never shapeless. Their length always has soft movement, a little lift at the root, and layers that keep the ends from looking like frayed rope. I want you to notice the pattern across all 5 of these. The crop, the perm, the blunt bob, the over-thinned chop, and the flat long hair. Every single one fails for the same underlying reason. They all remove movement and misplace weight. They flatten where we need lift and pile weight where we need softness. And that pattern is not an accident. It points directly to the one thing the industry never wanted us to understand, which is the secret I've been saving, the one that ties everything together. Here it is. The single most important truth about hair after 60 is not length. It is not color. It is where the light lands on your face. And there is a cutting and styling principle, an old one, that controls exactly that, and it was quietly cut out of the standard advice given to older women. I want to tell you where I found it, because that's what convinced me it was real. I found it while reading about the women who aged in front of cameras for a living, and somehow kept looking luminous into their 70s, 80s, and beyond. Think of the great silver-haired models and screen icons of the 20th century. The women born in the 1920s and 1930s who never disappeared. One of the most famous silver-haired models kept working on the runway and in front of the lens into her late 80s with her natural silver hair. These women did not have younger faces than the rest of us. They had one styling principle in common, drilled into them by old-school hairdressers who understood light. The hair must be shaped to lift up and away from the face at the top and sides, so that light falls onto the face and brightens it, instead of hanging down and casting the face into shadow. That is the whole secret. Lift and light. The old hairdressers called shaping the hair to open up the face and catch the light exactly what mattered most on a mature woman. Because a lifted, illuminated face reads as young, awake, and alive, while a face curtained in flat, downward hair reads as tired and older, no matter how good the skin is. Every one of the 5 bad haircuts breaks this rule. The crop kills the lift on top. The perm and the chop scatter the light into frizz. The blunt bob and the flat long hair drag everything down and cast the face into shadow. And the standard, age-appropriate advice we were handed steered us straight into shadow every single time. So here is exactly how you use this secret this week, with the hair you already have. First, create lift at the crown and the front. You do not need a haircut for this. When you dry your hair, lift the roots at the top and the front away from your scalp with your fingers or a round brush, drying them in the lifted direction rather than letting them fall flat. Even fine, thin hair holds a little height when it's dried lifted instead of dried flat. That height is what tilts your whole hairline upward and opens the face. Second, shape the hair so the front pieces sweep up and back off your cheekbones, not down over them. Hair that falls forward onto the cheeks casts a shadow straight down the sides of your face and drags it. Hair that sweeps up and away lets the light hit your cheekbones and lifts the whole face. You can do this with the hair you have right now, just by drawing those front sections back and away instead of forward. Third, when it is time for an actual cut, this is the one instruction that changes everything, and I want you to say it to your stylist word for word. Ask for soft face-framing layers that are cut to lift up and away from the face, with a little height kept at the crown, and gentle, connected ends rather than heavy razored ones. That single sentence protects you from all 5 mistakes at once. It refuses the flat crop. It refuses the rigid perm. It refuses the blunt weight line. It refuses the over-thinning. And it refuses the flat, shapeless length. It is the whole secret in one request. The reason you were never simply told, shape your hair to lift and catch the light, is that it doesn't sell anything. It doesn't require a monthly appointment, It doesn't need a chemical service. It doesn't push a cabinet full of products. It just needs you to understand your own face and refuse to let your hair drag it down. Knowledge like that makes you a harder customer to sell to, and a woman who looks radiant on her own terms is not the customer the old model was built for. So the principle got buried under words like sensible and low maintenance, and we were handed shadow and called it flattering. I think about how many years I spent in that shadow. I think about the money, the perms, and the thinning, and the monthly trims to keep a crop I never wanted, the hundreds and hundreds of dollars spent making myself look older and calling it practical. And I think about the first morning, after I finally understood lift and light, when I dried my hair up in a way, moved my part, and swept the front off my cheeks. And I looked in the mirror and saw a woman I recognized from years earlier. I hadn't lost her. She'd just been hanging in shadow, waiting for someone to lift the curtain. That is what I want for you. Not a new head of hair, not a fortune spent, just the truth we were both denied, put back in your hands. You just took back something that was quietly taken from every one of us, the simple right to shape our own hair toward the light instead of away from it. That is not vanity. That is a woman refusing to disappear on schedule. Because that is who you are, and it's who I finally became. A woman who does not accept rules written to make her smaller, quieter, and easier to sell to. A woman who knows that elegance does not expire at 60 or 70 or ever, and that the only truly outdated thing in this whole story is the idea that we should settle for shadow. Now I want to hear from you, and I mean this. Of the 5 haircuts I named, tell me which one you were talked into. Was it the sensible crop, the tight perm, the blunt bob, the over-thinned chop, or the long, flat hair with no shape? Type it in the comments right now, in one sentence, and tell me who told you it was the right choice. I read them, and I answer, and I promise you are not the only one who was fooled. This audience does not speak up unless it's asked plainly, so I'm asking you plainly. Leave your comment before you click away. And if you are done accepting shadow, come sit with the rest of us who see through the old rules now. Subscribing here is not about helping me. It's about joining a room full of women who are quietly reclaiming their elegance and refusing to vanish. Because in the very next video, I'm pulling back the curtain on the one hair color mistake that ages us faster than any haircut ever could, the safe shade nearly every one of us was told to choose, and the single adjustment that makes gray look like a choice instead of a surrender. I found the reason it works in the same buried place I found today's secret, and once you see it, you'll never look at your own reflection the same way again. Come find out with me. Your best hair is not behind you. It's been waiting in the light this whole time, and now you know exactly how to step into it. Before you go, here's what comes next. Inside the ageless elegance circle, I share the buried cutting technique. For lifted, luminous silver hair, explained step by step. You can ask me your own question and I answer you myself, never a machine. And so many stylish women like you are already here with us. Just point your phone camera at the code on your screen, and you can cancel any time with one click. Now that you know which cuts to avoid, let me show you something wonderful. The right color can take years off your face almost instantly. That video is starting right here. Stay with me and see for yourself.